Under the golden lights of a Boston restaurant, a black man received one message that shattered his dignity. "You seem nice, but I can't be seen with someone like you." He didn't know that moment of humiliation would ignite a storm capable of destroying an entire empire. The golden lights of La Luna shimmered across the tables, catching on crystal glasses filled with untouched red wine. In that quiet glow sat Leo Washington, alone. On his phone screen, a new message appeared. Small, cold, cruel. "Wow, you actually showed up? In that shirt?" A second later, another text flashed in, sharper than the first. "Listen, you seem like a nice guy, but I can't be seen out with someone like you. No offense." Leo didn't know how long he'd been staring at the screen. Just 3 words, "like you," and it felt like someone had gripped his heart in their fist. He gave a short, strangled laugh, the kind that tastes like both humor and humiliation. Around him, white couples laughed and clinked glasses, the sound ringing like the chorus of a world he'd never been invited to join. A waiter passed by, his eyes flickering with a trace of pity. That was when Leo realized it wasn't just that he'd been stood up. He'd been put on display, a silent reminder that no matter how hard he tried, he didn't belong here. Inside his pocket, the last $50 from his emergency fund still sat folded tight. He hadn't spent it to chase love. He'd spent it to feel, just for one night, like someone worthy of respect. But even that, it seemed, was a luxury. Heat rose up his neck, burning with shame. Was there ever such a thing as an ordinary night for someone like him? Or was every step outside his comfort zone just another gamble with his own dignity? And the question that haunted him most of all: who would set up a cruel joke like this? A few weeks before the night at La Luna, when Boston's skyline had just lit up and the low rumble of cargo trains echoed from across the river, Leo Washington often sat by his window, watching the soft glow of his phone screen. Every time it chimed, his heart skipped just a little. The messages were from Jessica, a woman he'd met on a dating app. Her words arrived at a steady rhythm, enough to fill the quiet spaces in his lonely nights. "I like men who take care of their families. You seem like that kind of man. You work in freight logistics? I've always admired people who keep the world moving." Leo reread those lines, a small smile tugging at his lips. There was something about her tone, natural, unforced, that made him believe she genuinely understood him. They talked about everything: work, the mac and cheese his daughter loved, even how he still drove the same old pickup because he joked it might get jealous if he replaced it. For the first time in a long while, he could laugh without pretending. His job at Quantum Freight was never easy. He was the first one at the warehouse every morning and usually the last to leave. His hands were calloused, his shirt often smelled faintly of machine oil, but he wore that like a badge of pride. Each carefully packed shipment was proof of the quiet dedication no one ever seemed to notice. Marcus, his co-worker, was the complete opposite, always immaculate. Pressed shirt, polished shoes, a cologne that lingered in the air. He spoke smoothly, every sentence polished to sound like a charm. Yet behind the smile, there was always a needle. "Impressive work, Leo," Marcus would say. "The way you explain technical stuff, so easy to understand." His voice was light, but his eyes said something else. Easy to understand really meant simple-minded. "I'm sure Mr. Henderson loves that." Diversity initiatives always make the company look progressive. Leo didn't laugh this time. He only murmured, "Maybe so," though inside something went cold. He was used to it, the need to work twice as hard to be seen half as much. He knew that to Marcus, he wasn't a colleague. He was a reminder that talent didn't come with the right skin color. That was why the chats with Jessica felt precious. She remembered details and asked about Mia's birthday. "You braid her hair yourself?" "That's adorable," she wrote. Leo chuckled, wondering when he had ever mentioned that. He didn't know Marcus had overheard. That exact story while Leo called his mother during lunch break. A small piece of information that slipped into the wrong ears and would soon weave the perfect trap. Time moved gently, each night blending into the next. The messages came and went, leaving behind something fragile but warm. For once, Leo let himself believe this might be the start of something good, rare but real. When Jessica suggested they meet, he hesitated. Then she wrote, "I want to see the man behind those kind words." Just one line, and he said yes. They agreed to meet that weekend at La Luna, the elegant restaurant downtown. Leo knew the place was far above his means, but he didn't care. He wasn't going to impress her. He wanted to prove to himself that he belonged in spaces like that too. The night before the date, laughter filled his small apartment. Mia sat on a chair while Leo carefully braided her hair, each twist deliberate, as if untangling his own thoughts. "Daddy, is she pretty?" Mia asked, tilting her head toward him in the mirror. "I haven't met her yet, but I bet she is," he said, smiling as he tied the end. "She'll like you. Just don't make your serious face." "My serious face?" "Yeah, the one you make when you talk to Mr. Marcus." Leo burst out laughing and made a goofy face. Mia giggled so hard she nearly fell off the chair. When she fell asleep, he pulled out his only white shirt and ironed the faded creases. The cuffs were frayed, the collar slightly worn, but he smoothed every wrinkle with care. Tomorrow, he wanted to look his best. Not for anyone else, but for himself. That night at La Luna, he waited far too long for a date that never came. What stayed with him wasn't the waiter's polite smile or the restaurant's golden lights. It was the sting in those 3 words glowing on his phone. "Like you." He thought what he felt was disappointment, but what settled in his chest wasn't that. It was shame, quiet and metallic, spreading cold beneath his skin. The room seemed to widen around him, filled with laughter and glances he couldn't meet. They didn't have to say a word. Their existence alone was enough to remind him he didn't belong. He sat still, forcing his face to stay calm. Slowly, he set the phone down, staring at the glass of water where the ice had melted. In its reflection, he saw a man trying to hold on to the last thread of his dignity in a world that never invited him in. Across the room, Isabella "Izzy" Vance watched quietly. She wasn't there for dinner. She was inspecting the restaurant's operations. But when she saw the man by the window, phone clenched tight in his hand, she paused. She recognized that look, the look of someone who had learned to shrink themselves just to make others comfortable. The way he sat a little straighter than necessary. The way he looked down at his glass, swallowing humiliation like it was part of the meal. Izzy sighed softly. She'd known nights like that. Rooms full of white men discussing diversity and inclusion as if they were theories, not wounds. She called the manager over. "See the man by the window?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Send him our best pasta. And tell him this exactly. From someone who knows you deserve a seat at any table." The manager hesitated. "He hasn't ordered anything, ma'am." He has now. When the plate arrived, Leo looked up. "I didn't order this." "Yes, sir," the waiter said with a small smile. "It's a gift, and the sender asked me to say, from someone who knows you deserve a seat at any table." Leo froze. In that instant, the world stopped. The clinking glasses, the low laughter, the dim golden light, all of it faded. Only that sentence remained, soft as air but burning like fire. He looked around. No one met his eyes, but in the far corner, he spotted a woman in black, her head slightly tilted as if listening to music. He didn't know if she was the one who sent it, but for the first time that night, warmth spread through his chest. The feeling of being seen by a stranger who didn't pity him, but respected him. He took a bite. The blend of cheese and pepper filled his mouth, rich and comforting. His eyes stung. not from spice, but from the quiet realization that, in that moment, he no longer felt invisible. For the first time that night, he was seen, not through pity, but through recognition. And from the ashes of humiliation, a fragile seed of dignity began to grow, watered by a stranger's kindness. Have you ever had a terrible day saved by a simple act of kindness? Hit like, share your story in the comments, and subscribe, because Leo's fight to reclaim his dignity has only just begun. He didn't yet know that the woman who'd given him hope was also the one holding the future of quantum freight in her hands. And what seemed like a random act of compassion was about to ignite a revolution. The smell of coffee filled the small apartment. Leo poured himself a cup and sat down at the kitchen table, where unpaid bills and Mia's coloring pages tangled in a quiet kind of chaos. Outside the window, Boston was waking up. Trucks rumbled in the distance, and the first pale light of morning spilled through the curtains, soft but steady. He took a sip. The burnt bitterness scraped down his throat. Last night still felt like a dream split in two, half humiliation, half kindness. The shuffle of little feet echoed across the floor. Mia came running out, her hair wild, clutching her old teddy bear. "Daddy, you're up so early." "Yeah," Leo said softly. "Got a busy day ahead." She blinked. "Was she pretty? The lady from your date?" He froze for a second, then smiled faintly. "I don't know, sweetheart. She didn't show up." Mia tilted her head, unfazed. "Maybe she got stuck in traffic." Leo chuckled and pulled her into his arms. "Maybe," she whispered into his chest, "but you're still smiling. That means it's okay." The words caught him off guard. She was right. He was still smiling, and that meant he hadn't fallen apart. He stood, straightened his tie, and grabbed his old jacket from the chair. Before leaving, he looked back at Mia coloring quietly on the floor. In her small world, he was still a superhero. And superheroes didn't quit. The drive to work felt longer than usual, not because of traffic, but because the echoes of last night kept replaying in his head. The golden light of La Luna, the clinking glasses, and those three words, "like you," still burning somewhere deep inside. When Leo walked into the operations floor at Quantum Freight, the usual mix of diesel and machine oil greeted him. But today, something was different. People avoided eye contact. A few offered awkward smiles before turning back to their screens. Marcus appeared, crisp white shirt, pale blue tie, immaculate as always. He stopped right beside Leo, coffee cup in hand. "Rough night, buddy?" "You look tired," he said, voice too casual. Leo looked up. "I don't think my personal life is your entertainment." Marcus smirked. "Hey, I'm just looking out for you. First impressions matter here, you know? Sometimes all it takes is one little outburst, and people start thinking you're not stable." He walked off, leaving behind the faint scent of cologne, and something uglier. Leo's fists tightened. There was something in Marcus's tone, the way he smiled like a man holding a secret, that made Leo's skin crawl. Around noon, the office phone buzzed. "Leo, Mr. Henderson wants to see you." "Right now?" "Yes, sounds serious." Leo exhaled slowly, then knocked on the glass door. Henderson looked up from his desk, his expression polite but cold behind the lenses of his glasses. "Have a seat, Leo." His tone was calm, almost gentle, but his eyes carried that familiar mix of pity and prejudice Leo had seen too many times before. "I've heard you're dealing with personal issues," Henderson began. "I just want to make sure it's not affecting your performance." "Personal issues?" Leo frowned. "I don't know what you mean." "Well," Henderson continued, "Marcus mentioned you slammed your hand on the table during this morning's briefing. A few others said you were a bit aggressive. You know how it is. Leadership roles require a cool head." A cool head. The phrase sounded polite but cut like glass. It didn't mean composure. It meant people like you can't be trusted to lead. Leo's voice stayed steady. I've worked here 7 years. Never missed a deadline, never caused a scene. If you think I'm not qualified, say it plainly. Don't hide it behind the word personal. Henderson sighed. I'm not saying that. But sometimes, how others perceive you matters just as much as your work. There it was. The velvet-covered knife. Others, Leo knew, meant Marcus. He stood, voice low but firm. Thanks for the advice, sir. He left the room, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving only a heavy silence. In the break room, conversations died as he entered. One co-worker muttered, I heard about what happened at La Luna. Was it true? Shh! He's right there! The whispers stopped, but the air was thick with judgment. Leo walked past them, breathing deep, forcing himself to stay calm. At that same moment, several floors above in the glass tower of Vance Holdings, Isabella Vance sat before a wall of security monitors. She was reviewing footage from La Luna, not out of curiosity, but as part of a standard operations check. Then something made her pause. In one frame, a man in a white shirt sat in the corner, glancing repeatedly toward the window table where Leo had been. Izzy slowed the footage. 2 men, 2 worlds, but that look was no coincidence. Parker, she called, voice cool and decisive. Run background checks on both men, the one in the white shirt and the man by the window. I want files by this afternoon. 2 hours later, the report landed on her desk. Marcus Evans, logistics supervisor. Leo Washington, operations technician. Both employees of Quantum Freight, the very company Vance Holdings was preparing to acquire. Interesting, Izzy murmured. Dig deeper. Her tech team returned minutes later, uneasy. Ma'am, we found something odd. The dating profile, Jessica, the one linked to Mr. Washington, was created from a public IP address belonging to a cafe, directly across from Quantum Freight headquarters. Izzy's eyes hardened. Pull the footage from that cafe. A moment later, the screen flickered. There was Marcus, hunched over his laptop, untouched coffee beside him, the monitor's glow reflected in his glasses. She didn't need more evidence to know. The date at La Luna had been a setup, a trap designed to humiliate. As dusk crept through the office windows, Leo packed his things in silence. Henderson had told him to take a few days to clear his head, the polite way of saying, don't come back right now. He unclipped his badge, stacked his papers neatly, and slid them into a cardboard box. Every motion felt like folding away a chapter of his life. Then came the sound of heels. Mr. Washington? He turned and froze. The woman in the black suit, sharp-eyed and calm, was the same one from La Luna. You're the lady from the restaurant, he said. Call me Izzy, she replied, offering a small, knowing smile. Isabella Vance. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Marcus went pale. Henderson stepped out of his office, startled. Mrs. Vance! What an unexpected honor. Izzy cut him off, gaze fixed on Leo. I'm here to see Mr. Washington. A hush rippled through the hallway. Curious faces turned. She walked up to Leo and handed him a small card. You left this behind last night, she said quietly. On the back, written in clean cursive, Cafe across the street, 9 a.m. tomorrow. I have something you need to see. Then she turned to Henderson, her tone cooling. We'll be talking soon, Mr. Henderson, but not today. When she left, the hall fell utterly silent. Marcus looked down at his shoes. Henderson stood stiff as marble. And Leo, who'd just been pushed to the edge of ruin, held that card like a lifeline. That night, the city shimmered with streetlights. Leo sat by his window, watching the cars flow below. The business card rested in his hand, its silver letters glinting softly. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, only that this time he wouldn't stay silent. And somewhere high above the Charles River, Izzy stared out from her office window and murmured, All right, Leo Washington. Tomorrow we begin. 9 a.m. Sunlight in Boston glanced off the cafe window and pooled on a mug of coffee still steaming. Leo sat alone, fingers laced, steadying his breath. The little cafe sat directly across from Quantum Freight. From this seat, he could see the revolving glass doors where his former co-workers still drifted in and out, calm, as if he'd never existed there. Heels clicked on tile. Isabella Vance approached in the same black suit as before, eyes sharp but composed. "You're on time," she said, taking the chair across from him. "You said you had something I needed to see." "Call me Izzy," she reminded him with a brief smile. "And yes, I do." She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward him. The footage came from this very cafe's camera. Marcus, in the corner, head bent over a laptop. Izzy's voice dropped. "The Jessica account was created here. Same day, same hour, same IP address." Leo said nothing. Shock rippled through his chest. "The La Luna setup," she went on, "wasn't meant to humiliate you. It was designed to ruin your credibility. So when you spoke up about internal violations, no one would believe you." Leo looked up, voice tight. "What violations?" Izzy slid him a slim folder. "Chemical shipments, forged safety certificates. I'm preparing to acquire Quantum Freight, so I had to check the books. I found manual edits to safety reports. On the same day Marcus filed your last report." Leo stared at the dense columns of numbers, anger and fear rising together. "I reported that," he said quietly. "3 times." No one answered. "Henderson said I was sensitive. I didn't think—" She nodded. "I know, and they wanted you silent. Now we can make them listen." He lifted his gaze. Something in his eyes had changed. Not the look of a wounded man, but of someone starting to stand. "If I help you, where does this go?" Izzy tilted her head, voice even. "You're not helping me. You're helping yourself, and everyone else who's been treated the way you have." Silence held for a beat. Then Leo nodded. "I'll do it," he said slowly. "But not for you." He looked up, eyes bright in the morning glare. "For my daughter. I want her to grow up in a world where fairness isn't a privilege." Izzy smiled. "Good. Then it's time they faced you." An hour later, a Vance Holdings sedan pulled up to Quantum Freight's front steps. News that Mrs. Vance, a major prospective investor, had arrived spread like fire. Davies, the operations director, a polished middle-aged man with slicked-back hair, came out to greet her in person. Henderson tight-faced at his side. "An honor to have you here, Mrs. Vance," Davies said with a professional smile. "We're eager to collaborate." "I hope so," Izzy answered lightly. "I want to see the freight handling protocols. Mr. Washington will join me, yes?" The air shifted at once. Marcus went pale. Henderson pressed his lips together. Davies's smile held on by a thread. "Of course. Though Mr. Washington isn't currently—" "He knows this system better than anyone," Izzy cut in. "And I want his perspective." They moved into the main conference room. Davies stood before the projector, rattling off impressive safety metrics. Izzy listened for a moment, then turned. "Impressive indeed, but I have a question. Mr. Washington, could you walk me through shipment 7B4, the one processed recently?" The room seemed to freeze. Leo stood. No papers, no notes. He spoke from memory and from truth. That load carried a photochemical solution. The safety certificate was recorded as signed at 11:42 p.m., but the shipment left the dock at 10:30, which means it was never inspected. A low murmur rippled through the room. Davies tried to smile. His voice wobbled. "With all due respect, Mrs. Vance, this is a misunderstanding. Mr. Washington can be prone to overinterpreting issues." Leo looked straight at him. "A misunderstanding? What about the Jessica account? What about the trap you had someone build to wreck my credibility?" Davies faltered, his face going stone still. Marcus started to rise, but Izzy lifted a hand and he sank back down. "Do you have proof, Leo?" she asked, calm as glass. "I do." He pulled a USB drive from his pocket and slid it into the projector. The screen brightened. There was Marcus in the cafe, timestamp, date, and IP address matching the creation of Jessica. Then came screenshots from Quantum Freight's internal logs, the same IP accessing both the safety files and Leo's personnel records. Davies blanched, lips moving without sound. "This," Leo said, voice low and clear, "is how they tried to shut me up. When I found the falsified shipment, they engineered a fake date, sent degrading texts to push me over the edge, then spread the word that I was unstable. The goal was to seed doubt before I could speak." Henderson dropped his gaze, face heavy with shame. Marcus trembled, mouth clenched. "There's nothing tying me to any of this," Davies snapped. Izzy cut in, voice like steel. "There is." An internal email filled the screen, Davies's directive. "Handle Washington as soon as possible. I don't want him talking about the chemical shipment. Marcus Evans will take care of the rest." Davies went rigid. The air thickened, dense enough to hear hearts beating. Leo clicked the screen dark. He turned to Henderson, voice rough but steady. "This isn't just about barrels of chemicals, sir. It's about a culture you allowed to take root, where people bury the truth with pretty lies." He paused, then looked around the room. "I used to feel invisible. Today I want every one of you to see me." No one spoke. Light caught in Izzy's eyes, the look of someone watching the powerful crumble before the courage of the underestimated. The conference room at Quantum Freight still trembled in the echo of chaos. Davies was led away in silence. Marcus stared at the floor. Henderson stood frozen, like a man just waking from years of blindness. On the darkened screen, Leo's reflection lingered. Calm, upright, no longer the man humiliated at La Luna. As they stepped into the hallway, Izzy spoke softly. "You just did what most people only dream of doing." Leo looked ahead. "No, I just said what everyone should have said." A faint smile curved on her lips. "Sometimes it only takes one voice to bring a wall down." Within hours, the news swept through Boston. Quantum Freight's operations director accused of fraud and workplace discrimination. The stock crashed. Investors pulled out. But amid the wreckage, something else began. A ripple of courage. One by one, engineers, managers, and warehouse staff came forward, filing reports, breaking silences they had carried for years. Leo hadn't just exposed a scheme. He had awakened a conscience. 3 days later, Izzy entered Henderson's office. "I'm buying Quantum Freight," she said simply. "But I'm not keeping its old system." Henderson nodded, weary but sincere. "I understand. And I think Mr. Washington deserves the position we took from him." When Leo returned to the operations floor, the machines still rumbled, as always. But this time, heads lifted. Nods met him from every corner. Then applause. Quiet at first, then steady, deep, like a single heartbeat shared among them. No one looked at him as a man who'd been rescued. They looked at him as the man who had saved them. Weeks later, La Luna shimmered again with candlelight. At the same table by the window, Leo sat with Mia and Izzy. "Miss Izzy," Mia said, holding up a napkin covered in crayon. "This is you. You're a superhero." Izzy laughed. "Oh no, sweetheart. Your dad's the superhero. Because real heroes aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who always rise." Leo smiled quietly, watching his daughter's laughter fill the room. In that moment, he realized, every humiliation, every loss, every sleepless night had led him here, to finally live as himself. After dinner, they walked along the Charles River. The night breeze stirred the leaves, scattering gold reflections across the water. "I don't know how to thank you," Leo said softly. "Maybe dinner again, next time? A real one." Izzy paused, the wind brushing her hair. "Leo," she said, her voice firm but warm, What we're doing is bigger than a dinner. Tomorrow, I'll make my formal offer to acquire quantum freight. But I won't do it alone. She met his eyes. I don't need an operations director. I need a partner, someone who understands the value of dignity more than anyone. Leo hesitated. Me, I'm just a worker. I don't have money or status. Izzy smiled. You have something worth more. Trust, integrity, the faith of everyone down there. That's your capital. The river wind stirred again, glinting light across their faces. A woman who had learned to fight in silence, and a man once forced into silence just to survive. Now they stood as equals, ready to rewrite how the world treated people like them. Boston's night was still. Leo lifted his gaze to the skyline. The same towers that once felt unreachable now gleamed within his sight. He had walked into La Luna invisible, and walked out as a man capable of changing a system. Izzy's words echoed in his mind. Fairness isn't a privilege. It's the right to be seen. He smiled faintly, whispering a promise to his daughter carried by the wind. You'll grow up in a different world, Mia. A world where justice doesn't have to be begged for. What do you think about Izzy's offer? Should Leo become her partner and rebuild quantum freight from the ashes? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Toch Story for more emotional stories that remind us kindness and integrity still have the power to change the world.